Rick Harrison was on trial for smuggling drugs and laundering money, which was a financial case that got a lot of attention from the media and fans across the country. Then the 27th witness stood up, a young woman whose face and name had never been seen on porn stars. She said, "I am his adopted daughter." That was all she said to break the silence in the courtroom, but her next words, just 5 words, were enough to turn the whole thing upside down. It was enough to tear down the facade that had been built up over thousands of TV shows, commercials, and the image of America's good father. No one knew that Rick Harrison had been hiding an adopted daughter for more than a decade. What she brought into the courtroom wasn't a plea for mercy, but a horrifying secret of control abuse and systematic silence. Were her words the truth, or just a cruel twist in the middle of a media storm? Part 1. The TV godfather Rick Harrison used to be the perfect example of American reality TV. He was a down-to-earth businessman from the working class who turned a run-down porn shop in Las Vegas into an entertainment empire worth tens of millions of dollars. For over a decade, people watched Porn Star not just for the antiques, but also for the man behind the counter. Rick's voice had the air of someone who knows what's right. The show debuted in 2009, and the show quickly became a hit on the History Channel. The format was simple. Customers brought strange or valuable items to the gold and silver porn shop, and Rick and his family members appraised, negotiated, and bought them. But the show's success didn't come from the items themselves. It came from the family. Rick and his father, Richard Oldman Harrison, represented 2 generations with different ways of thinking and negotiating. Rick's son, Cory, represented the new generation, which was impulsive and against tradition but very loyal to the family. Together, they made a deeply human story in which viewers not only learned about history, but also felt like they were a part of that family. At its center was Rick Harrison, who was more than just the shop's owner. He defined the show's identity. Behind the scenes, Rick was known for being very strict. He insisted on watching episode cuts before they aired, stepped in after the auction as needed, and wouldn't let any detail that could hurt the family's image be shown. Everything had to be relatable, respectful, and very American. The media worked together perfectly. In interviews, Rick put on a funny, sometimes sarcastic, but always moral persona. Every article and TV appearance protected him from suspicion. Even when rumors spread in the industry that Rick wasn't as friendly off-screen as he was on, no one was brave enough to look deeper. After all, Rick made money. But there was a strange hole in this perfect family picture. There was no daughter. On the show, in magazines, and at fan events, Rick talked about "my son, my father, and myself." There were no photos, personal stories, or on-air appearances of Rick's adopted daughter. At the time, the media gave simple explanations, like that she might not have liked being in the spotlight, or that he was trying to protect his children's privacy. But looking back, it was neither romantic nor benign. It was a fatal gap in the story that showed Rick created a televised family that was completely separate from his real one, with one member left out to hide a dark secret. His daughter's absence was not a small matter. People saw Rick as Sarika's father figure, but the child he was supposed to protect was left alone and had to deal with a system meant to keep her quiet. When it came out during the trial that Rick had installed an internal camera system in his home, that his adopted daughter was homeschooled and had no friends or freedom, she couldn't even lock her door, and that there was no family photo of her with Rick, a different picture emerged, one of a Rick Harrison that most people had never heard of. He used fame as a mask and controlled not only the TV story, but also the truth. Part 2. The Girl in the Shadow. Most people thought that the girl in question didn't exist, or that she was part of Rick Harrison's private life, and was kept secret by reporters by pretending to be his foster father. But at the trial, it became clear that the girl's silence wasn't out of love but because of strategy. Her real name was never revealed, mentioned on TV or in any article or interview about Rick. According to court records and her own testimony, she was born in San Bernardino, California, in 2001. Her biological mother struggled with drug addiction and was deemed unfit to parent. Her unidentified birth father is thought to have been homeless and sometimes in jail. From the time she was a child, she was in foster care and moved from home to home calling strangers Dad and Mom. When she was 10, she was chosen for a Las Vegas program. Rick was the main sponsor of a charity event in Las Vegas for needy kids. The victim said that he walked into the crowded room and stopped in one corner, where she was sitting quietly with her eyes closed and not squeezing candy like the other kids. He looked at me as if I were a unique artifact, she told the court. Right after the event, Rick started the adoption process, which went through a strangely short period of time. Under Nevada law, adoption usually takes at least 12 months of background checks, but in just 84 days, Rick was given legal custody. No one questioned it because he was Rick Harrison. So the girl came into his life not out of love, but through a legal contract. When she moved into Rick's West Las Vegas mansion, everything seemed perfect at first. She had her own room, nice clothes, hot meals, and a rich, famous father who smiled at her all the time. But within weeks, the rules came out. She couldn't leave her room after 8 p.m. She couldn't lock her room, use social media, or make phone calls without being watched. She was homeschooled by tutors who changed every few months. She had no friends, no school, and no contact with the outside world. When she was 11, she realized she wasn't living with a family, but in a system of complete control where everything she did and felt needed permission. When her lawyer asked her why she didn't fight back, she said, "I thought I was lucky. Every foster child dreams of a family, and I had a famous father. I believed he loved me." Back rubs, which she complained about, and nightly kisses on the forehead, which made her feel unsafe. Over time, Rick's smile turned into her worst nightmare. She couldn't pinpoint the moment when he went from being a foster father to an abuser. Everything he did was covered up as love. Rick would say, "I only do this because you're special. You deserve the best, but don't tell anyone, they wouldn't understand." The control cycle started with isolating her and ended with manipulating her mind. Even scarier was the fact that her half-brother Cory Harrison was present at these family events. He didn't say much but watched intently. According to her testimony, Cory got angry whenever she didn't do what she was told. On one occasion, Rick told her, "You need to learn how to share affection in this family. Here, your brother and I are one." In that moment, she realized that she was not a child adopted out of love, but an object owned over time. These actions became ritual late-night lessons, Cory entering her room without knocking, unusually long embraces whenever she cried or protested. Rick would say, "If you're not grateful, I can return you to where you're from." It didn't take yelling threats to silence her. Just the thought of being sent to foster care or living on the streets was enough. "I didn't want to become just another number here. At least I was Rick Harrison's daughter, even though that name was never really mine." She wrote in a diary later that was turned in as evidence. "I dared not confide in anyone." She tried to speak up when a new tutor came in, but some people saw it but pretended not to. They worked for Rick Harrison, not their consciences, she said. The courtroom was stunned into silence when she tried to escape when she was 15. She slipped out a side door and went to the nearest police station, but within hours Rick arrived with an attorney. He told the police that she was a troubled teen who had been emotionally abused by her mother. They believed him and sent her back to her room, where the door was locked more securely than before. But Rick couldn't control her memory or her resolve. Even though she was living in fear, she wrote it all down. She kept track of every detail, renamed files, and hid memory cards as proof for the day she knew that silence would destroy what was left of herself. That day, she was on the witness stand, no longer the troubled child, but an adult who was the only one brave enough to stand up in a room full of powerful people and say, "I am the truth you tried to bury alive." Part 3, The trial moves to Las Vegas on Monday morning. The federal trial of Rick Harrison, the main suspect in a high-profile case of antiquities smuggling and money laundering, began its third week with a shocking development. A woman who was confirmed to be Rick's legally adopted daughter came forward in court and made serious claims of long-term abuse at the hands of both Rick and his son Cory Harrison. At first, the 27th witness's appearance didn't get much attention. She took the stand calmly, and the prosecution confirmed her identity, but kept it from the public. When she was finally allowed to speak, she looked directly at Rick and said 5 chilling words: "They took turns on me." The statement shocked everyone in the courtroom. Some reporters stopped writing down what they had just heard because they couldn't believe it. Rick's defense team asked for an immediate recess, saying that the testimony had nothing to do with the financial aspects of the case, but the motion was turned down. According to the courtroom testimony, the woman had been adopted by Rick at the time of the crime. 11 years old. After a charity event where he was a major sponsor, she told of sexual abuse, coercion, and psychological manipulation she said she had experienced at the hands of Rick and his son over the course of several years while living with them. She said she tried to escape when she was 15, but was caught because Rick told the police she had an adolescent behavioral disorder. After that incident, her life became even more limited. It was shocking when she talked about Rick's chilling warning, "No one will believe you. I'm Rick Harrison, you're nobody." It turned out that the witness had been quietly gathering evidence over the years, including voice recordings, screenshots, personal diaries, and copies of data from internal surveillance cameras. She testified that she had backed up this data on a hard drive and brought it to court. The hard drive is now being held for forensic examination. This event changed the course of the case in a big way. The trial started out as a case about financial crimes, but has since grown into a much more serious criminal investigation into claims of child abuse, exploitation, and psychological manipulation. After the witness's testimony, the lead prosecutor said that the charges would be expanded if the evidence is proven. Rick Harrison's lawyers have not released a formal statement, but they have said that their client denies any claims that are not related to the original case. On social media, a video clip showing the exact moment of her arrest was posted. The witness's testimony went viral. The hashtag #JadedTheyTookTurnsOnMe was used more than 3 million times in the first 8 hours after the hearing. Child protection groups and activists have called for a wider investigation and better protection for the witness. Legal experts now think the Rick Harrison trial is likely to turn into a complex criminal case involving child abuse. This is not what most people expected when the proceedings started out being about financial misconduct and federal financial violations. The question is no longer how many truths have been buried beneath the legacy he spent over a decade building. Part 4, Evidence and Diaries, when the truth comes with attached files. The day after Rick Harrison's legally adopted daughter gave her shocking testimony in a Las Vegas courtroom, the jury and the rest of the legal team met earlier than usual. This was because the prosecution had officially moved to expand the scope of the trial based on new evidence. The witness turned in a hard drive with hundreds of files, including handwritten diaries, photos, and audio recordings that were gathered over almost a decade. The first piece of digital evidence shown was a sealed evidence, stacked 2 TB SSD hard drive that held more than 400 data files organized in a detailed, time-stamped folder structure. These included pictures, videos, and audio recordings taken from the hidden cameras that were installed throughout the Harrison family's living quarters. Notably, several file names were changed. Digital forensic experts for the Clark County District Attorney confirmed that the drive showed no signs of tampering, fabrication, or post-creation editing. All file metadata matched the recorded timestamps and aligned with the security devices known to have been installed in Rick Harrison's home, including the covert cameras the defendant had long denied having. One video was screened privately for the suspects, but the victim's identity was kept secret. The camera caught the witness alone in her room, her eyes darting over and over to a corner of the ceiling that was later found to be where an ultra-small camera hidden inside a smoke detector was hidden. The witness's movements and reactions were in line with the psychological stress that had been diagnosed in previous medical evaluations. A handwriting expert also confirmed that a 176-page handwritten diary that had been kept in dry clean conditions and showing signs of natural aging was real. The prosecution hailed it as chronological proof of long-term abuse. Each entry not only told an emotional story, but also exactly matched the timestamps in the digital data. Each entry listed specific dates, feelings, dialogue, actions taken, and times of day. For example, on July 22, 2015, Rick came in after dinner and said, "No one would ever love me like he and Cory do. He turned up the speakers in the living room very loud, and I knew tonight would not be a good night." Video footage from that exact date and time showed Rick being in the bedroom area for 47 minutes after the stereo system was turned on and sounded very loud. All of these details were supported by the home security recordings that were still stored in the internal archive. In addition to the digital files and the diary, the prosecution showed messages and emails that Rick sent and received with his son Cory Harrison. Rick's lawyers said the message from Cory at 2:14 a.m. "Read your turn tonight." They said it might have been an inside joke or a reference to a rotating family duty schedule, but based on the current evidence and testimony, that explanation was found to be completely unconvincing. One of the most damning pieces of evidence was an 18-second audio clip recorded on the witness's old cell phone. In it, a man identified as Rick Harrison says, "You should consider yourself lucky we adopted you. If you were still in the system, you'd be passed around like UCLA voice experts were able to match the clip to Rick Harrison's known vocal samples with more than 96% confidence." Next, physical evidence. Witnesses took the stand. Gloria Mendoza, a housekeeper who worked for the Harrison family from 2014 to 2016, said she accidentally walked in on Rick and his adopted daughter in a compromising situation. She said she saw the girl frozen with fear, her face pale, and Rick shirtless from the waist up. She quit soon after but did not tell anyone what happened. Delivery driver Brett Cummings was also called as a witness. While making an evening drop-off, he accidentally activated his phone's voice memo feature, which recorded a terrified scream and a clear plea that was transcribed at, "Please don't do it again." The Las Vegas Forensic Audio Laboratory confirmed that the recording was unaltered, and forensic psychologist Dr. Elizabeth Connors, an expert in post-traumatic stress disorder, confirmed that the witness's psychological profile fit the description of someone who had experienced PTSD with long-term sexual abuse trauma in a closed environment. Her symptoms, including dissociation, short-term memory loss, chronic insomnia, and severe anxiety, were all consistent with long-term systematized abuse. With this strong body of evidence, legal experts now agree that proving money laundering is just the tip of the iceberg. The witness's counsel has filed all of its materials with the FBI, calling for a wider federal investigation into organized child abuse and exploitation networks. A person who works in television production said that Rick Harrison turned down producers' requests to show his adopted daughter in on-screen family segments, saying that she doesn't like the camera. Today, that comment has a much deeper and more painful meaning. Part 5, Cory's Breakdown and the Heir exposed on April 18th in Courtroom 3 of the Clark County Courthouse. Next person called to the stand was Cory Harrison, Rick Harrison's biological son and heir to the porn star's brand. Cory had been silent throughout the trial until that point. Cory sat next to his father like a familiar silhouette, always there and listening but never speaking. But when Rick's adopted daughter testified and the seriousness of her accusations forced the defense to change their plan, Cory could no longer stay quiet. This was the second major turning point in the trial, after the shocking statement, "They took turns on me." But Cory's performance only made people more suspicious. He walked into court in a light gray suit with a hollow, doubt face instead of the usual confidence he showed on screen. He stumbled over his steps and avoided making eye contact with anyone in the room. Reporters later said that Cory seemed more like someone about to be arrested, than someone defending his family's legacy. The prosecutor started by asking standard questions about Cory's relationship with his father, his role in the family business, and how long he had lived with his father. His first responses to his adopted sister Cory were calm and well-practiced. He denied all the accusations, saying that the witness's story was made up and that it was because of long-term mental trauma. But when he saw a text message from Cory's phone to Rick at 2:14 a.m. that said, "Your turn tonight," he changed his mind. "Do you remember sending this message?" he asked, his calm breaking. The prosecutor asked no. Cory answered, "And what did you mean when you wrote 'your turn tonight'? Maybe the store's night shift?" 2:14 a.m. The night your sister wrote in her diary about feeling very anxious and writing that tonight would be our turn again. You're sure this was about the porn shop? There was a tense silence for almost 20 seconds before Cory snapped, "I have no idea what she's talking about." As the prosecution played an audio recording, a juror turned away and observers whispered to each other. On the recording, Cory's voice can be heard saying, "She's at it again. Maybe I need to teach her another lesson." The clip was captured by a pen-shaped recorder that was set up by a housekeeper who quit because she thought the home was toxic. According to her testimony, Rick and Cory said this in the living room the night their sister died. She had cried herself to sleep. When the recording was played back, Cory lost it. He jumped to his feet and yelled, "She's a liar. I fed her, clothed her, educated her." The judge's gavel hit the table loudly, and Cory's lawyer asked for a 10-minute break. When the hearing resumed, the mood in the courtroom had grown tense, and Cory's answers became halting and defensive, and he fixed his gaze on the floor. But the killer blow came from a personal diary entry that had been found during a search of Cory's own home. It was proven to be his. It said in handwriting, "I don't know how this will end. Sometimes I think it's gone too far, but now I'm just afraid she'll talk." When that line was read out loud, no one spoke. Cory sat stone. Still, Rick averted his eyes and stared down at the table. The prosecutor didn't ask any more questions because they weren't needed. A forensic psychologist from UNLV said after the trial that Cory showed no remorse, only fear of being exposed, which boosted the witness's credibility the most. Fans who used to like Cory's comments about porn stars were upset and disgusted. Clips of these comments were remixed and shared with captions like, "We thought this was playful joking." At the same time, an anonymous former crew member of Porn Stars told the Las Vegas Review-Journal, "Rick tightly controlled content. But Cory had a reputation for being difficult around female staff. No one dared speak up for fear of losing their jobs." That evening, an NBC columnist wrote, "Cory Harrison is more than an accused. He represents a generation born into privilege but devoid of ethics, claiming ownership over another human being." When Cory finally left the stand, he did so in silence, with no goodbyes or supportive glances. Rick's adopted daughter remained calm. A reporter said, "It wasn't hatred in her eyes. It was the look of someone who's seen her oppressor unmasked without saying a word." The lead prosecutor said that Cory's instead of disproving the accusations. The testimony provided more indirect evidence of planned wrongdoing and collaboration. The court has already accepted an extra charge against Cory for witness intimidation after emails were found in which he told former employees to keep everything we saw quiet. The trial will continue with the remaining witnesses, but lawyers agree that the Harrison family's defense has been irreparably broken, at least for Cory. Part 6. The empire's fall, Harrison's powerful testimony set off a chain of events that went beyond the courtroom. What started as a Nevada-only trial became a turning point in American television culture. That same day, the History Channel, which had been airing porn stars since 2009, said, "All episodes of Porn Stars are suspended across all platforms pending the court's final ruling." This carefully worded statement caused streaming services like Hulu, YouTube TV, and Amazon Prime to remove every episode of the show. Within 48 hours, everything from T-shirts to Rick Harrison action figures disappeared from Walmart and Target shelves. At the same time, the Federal Tax Division confirmed that it had frozen at least 12 bank accounts linked to Rick and started a full audit of all gold and silver porn shop transactions between 2015 and 2022. As these financial problems arose, a deeper crisis emerged. The Harrison family image that millions of people loved was revealed to be a carefully constructed media facade. A former show editor said this. Rick personally watched every episode before it aired. He oversaw the script and made sure that any scenes with his son or the late old man had to be both funny and heartwarming. The family was a classic American TV family, but leaked internal documents show that the relationship between the strict father Rick, the mischievous but teachable son Cory, and the strict grandfather Richard Oldman Harrison was designed to appeal to middle-aged viewers. Viewers never knew that behind these three men was at least one hidden daughter and an estranged oldest son Adam. Harrison, Rick's first child from a previous relationship, posted on social media, "I cut ties with Dad in 2017. I don't know everything, but I'm not surprised." Old rumors and exposes that were thought to be false came back to the surface under a new light. For example, a 2013 crew member's comment that they only act like a family when the cameras roll off camera, they barely speak unless forced, was looked at again and again by the gold and silver porn shop. Once the show's real life anchor couldn't handle the backlash. 3 days after secret home surveillance was revealed, the store announced a temporary closure to protect staff and the community. On TripAdvisor, where thousands of people had given the store 5 stars, its score dropped from 4.8 to 2.1 in just 1 week. Reviews went from praising an interesting experience to crying over realizing you believed people like that. A former employee speaking anonymously to BuzzFeed News said, "Working for the Harrisons used to be a lot of fun. People outside of the industry started to look at how the family brand had been crafted like a scripted TV show. Every relationship dynamic, every heartfelt moment with customers, and every emotional beat on screen had been carefully edited to create a compelling story that was both inspiring and entertaining." But when the mask came off, what was revealed was not a loving family, but a carefully planned brand strategy meant to hide a reality of control. Part 7, Crimes Disguised. When the Rick Harrison scandal broke, people asked, how could a beloved TV star who was once seen as an example of kindness and hard work commit or hide years of wrongdoing without being caught? The answer may not lie with Rick, but with us. People who watched him on TV shared clips of his ancient wisdom on YouTube and other sites. We believed the image we were shown because we wanted it to be true. This kind of blind faith in celebrities isn't new in modern society. From actors accused of domestic violence to politicians embroiled in scandals, American media history is full of examples of people blaming victims for destroying the image they loved. The Rick Harrison case is a stark and scary example. Harrison wasn't a Hollywood star or an international pop singer, but middle-aged viewers trusted him because he was an everyday American TV star who was friendly, funny, and a little old school. When his adopted daughter made serious accusations, many people didn't doubt Rick, but rather her. She just wants money. She's never appeared before. Why speak up now? Rick's a good man. TV doesn't lie. These comments, which were posted on Twitter and forums like Reddit, weren't meant to be mean, but to protect themselves. When a beloved image is broken, people cling to their old beliefs. We don't admire celebrities themselves. We admire the narratives they embody. When that narrative collapses, we lose a piece of our own identity, says Dr. Laura Kim, a media psychologist at Stanford University. Porn stars was never just entertainment. It was nostalgia. It was a routine TV ritual with family. It was a portrait of a wise father guiding his son through life's challenges. When the Rick Harrison scandal broke, viewers felt they weren't just witnessing a trial. They were the problem gets worse when fame comes with unchecked power. For over a decade, Rick wasn't just the famous owner of a porn shop. He also oversaw post-production, picked who would be in the shows, and even managed his family's private life. No one on the cast or crew could question what happened behind the camera. His adopted daughter, who is now the trial's key witness, wasn't in the media at all before. That wasn't by accident. She was deliberately kept secret. People who were interested in the show never thought about why a man who spoke so much about family values never showed his whole family to the world. This isn't just about Rick Harrison. It's about a system in society where fame gives people moral immunity. On the other hand, victims, especially those who are weak, like those in foster care, are doubted even when they show a lot of paperwork, witnesses, and digital proof. As journalist Elijah Monroe wrote in the Rick Harrison's case isn't the only one of its kind. He's just the most well-known example of how the media and people's trust in powerful people work together to protect them. The real question is how many other Ricks are out there beyond TV as motivational speakers on TED stages, on YouTube, and on TikTok, where they are trusted completely and never have to answer to anyone. The Rick Harrison trial may only last a few weeks, but the effects will last much longer for everyone involved, not just Harrison. Not only how we see celebrities in this age of mass media, but also how the trial ended. No one was talking about the original charges of money laundering and antiquities smuggling, which had once dominated the news. Instead, the focus was on Rick Harrison's adopted daughter, the person he had kept hidden. After 3 days on the stand, hundreds of documents, digital evidence, and a long line of supporting witnesses, she painted a true picture of the man. It was a portrait of the Harrison family without any TV colors, a musical score, or polished dialogue. It was just pieces of memory stitched together from pain, trauma, and fear. When she finally left the witness stand, she didn't look back at Rick or try to catch the jury's eye. She just walked out of the courtroom, each step heavy as if she were leaving behind a place where her voice had been buried for more than a decade. Reporters waited outside, but she didn't say anything. Her lawyer said one sentence on her behalf. That line may have best summed up a trial that was never just about judging one man. It was about a system that values fame so much that it sacrifices the truth. Rick Harrison had already lost everything, even though he was still waiting for the verdict. He had lost endorsement deals, his career, and his role as a porn star. His name was taken off of every cultural list that once praised him as America's everyman. Most importantly, people no longer trusted him. But the real denum didn't belong to Rick. It belonged to us. We are the ones who believed his TV persona, shared clips of his witty negotiations, and made memes out of his catchphrases. Now we have to face a harsh reality. Why were we so willing to believe? Who else might we blindly trust? The voice that Rick Harrison worked so hard to silence has returned, louder than ever. It has broken through the courthouse walls, beyond the limits of any television frame, and posed, in this day and age of idols and personal branding, what people are we ignoring, and when will we finally listen? I refused to die in silence, and today I did not. Her last words at the end of the hearing have become a rallying cry on social media. They are a banner that says she is not a victim, but a survivor. She is no longer the girl he tried to erase. She is a witness to a truth that the world chose to ignore. The court will make its legal decision, but the public has already made up its mind. Already given goes far beyond Rick Harrison. It condemns all of us who knew and didn't say anything but wondered.